Hello, 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 and welcome, and welcome. Thank you for coming. This is part of our People of the Power series here at Gifts of Life Ministries. I am the Reverend Dr. Andre Johnson, Senior Pastor of Gifts of Life Ministries, the Urban Oasis, and this is a smaller part of our EPE ministry, our Education for Public Engagement ministry. So happy to have all of you here tonight. Tonight we are live. A big shout out to the First Lady of G Life, Lisa Johnson, that's helping us out in the back room here with the Restream live broadcast. So we are here because it is the first day of Black History Month. It's the first Sunday of Black History Month. It's the first day. And it is a special day because it is the birthday of Bishop Henry McNeal Turner. So we're going to talk a little bit about Turner in the lecture that I'm going to give. We're going to have time for Q&A, so you can put your questions and comments in the comment section, and we will try to address as many as we can within the next hour. Click the share button wherever you're watching, whether it's YouTube, whether it's on Facebook. Click the share button. Let people know that we are live with the Power of the People series on the first Sunday and the first day of Black History Month. What is EPE? Check this out. It'll tell you a little bit more about it.
We are excited to announce the launch of a new educational initiative at Gifts of Life Ministries, the Education for Public Engagement, EPE Ministry. This program is designed to empower our church family and the broader community with essential knowledge, valuable resources, and a strong faith-based framework. Our goal is to foster informed, compassionate, and proactive engagement in civic life. Part of our EPE ministry is the Power to the People series. This series of lectures, workshops, seminars, and discussions will provide tools and insights that encourage critical thinking and active participation in local and national issues. By equipping individuals with the necessary skills and understanding, we can inspire meaningful conversations and actions that reflect our faith values in the public sphere. Ultimately, our goal is to cultivate a society that is not only more equitable but also rooted in justice, where the values of compassion, service, and integrity guide decision-making at every level. This commitment to living out one's beliefs in both the personal and public spheres can have a transformative impact on the broader community and help establish a foundation for a more just and harmonious society.
And that's our EPE ministry, Education for Public Engagement. And part of that ministry is what we're doing tonight, Power to the People series of lectures and workshops and seminars for the community, for people to gather information and to be empowered to act within their own communities and to discern what it is that God would have them to do. Again, so glad to have all of you watching. Why don't you shout yourselves out in the comment section so I can see who's watching, so I can maybe shout you out as well. But we are now about to prepare for this talk. I titled this talk, "The Hand and Circle of Dominant Power is Against Us." And that's a direct quote from Bishop Turner, claiming the prophetic mantle of Bishop Henry McNeal Turner. On February the 13th, 1906, over 200 delegates attended the two-day Georgia Equal Rights Convention in Macon, Georgia. According to the organizers, the meeting was harmonious and enthusiastic. During the convention, delegates adopted resolutions that asked for the abolition of Jim Crow cars and lynching, the right to join the militia, and representation on juries and a trial by one's peers. At the close of the meeting, the delegates decided to form a more permanent organization. And by the end of the convention, about 800 people attended. The highlight of the convention was a speech by Bishop Henry McNeal Turner that historians have called courageous and the high point of the convention. However, although no extant copies of the speech are available, we have newspaper accounts that reflect Turner's prophetic pessimism. Now, in my research on Bishop Turner, I have argued that Turner moves from an optimistic prophet to a pessimistic one. For instance, on February the 16th, 1906, the New York Times reported that in an address before 500 delegates at the Convention of Negroes, Bishop H.P. Turner, got that middle initial wrong, declared the American flag to be a dirty and contemptible rag, and that hell was an improvement on the United States when the Negro was involved. They also added that Turner said in closing, if a little ignorant and stupid white man who was never heard of and never would be heard of until 10,000 years after the resurrection trumpet wishes a little notoriety, he begins to belie and slander the Negro and bounds into popularity. Now, despite getting Turner's name wrong, other newspapers quickly picked up on this news story and added it to their own headlines. The Salt Lake Herald headline read, Negro Bishop Turner slanders Old Glory. The Daily World ran with the headline, Bishop Turner denounces the flag. The Carroll Bulletin led with the headline, Is a Dirty Rag? Turner would insist that he was misquoted in the Times, but that did not stop the onslaught of criticism hurled Turner's way. The Lancaster News of South Carolina published a letter to the editor from someone who lives in Macon, Georgia. The person calling herself or himself former Lancastrian wrote that, quote, Turner failed to receive the sanction of other Negroes in the convention and was doubtlessly surprised. The person continued by writing, quote, such leaders as Turner would never contribute much to the uplifting of his race. The Tallahassee Weekly True Democrat suggested that newspapers were making a mistake in publishing what he said in the speech. Quote, what the decrepit old idiot has to say about the nation, the flag, and our people hurts no one. And the best of his own race pays no attention to his periodical squeaks. They advised them to stop giving publicity, and if they do, he will quiet down. They held up the work of Benjamin Tanner as an example of how Black leaders should lead. Quote, he is doing a good work, the newspaper reported, among his people, and is bending all efforts to uplift, improve, and thus make them better citizens. They wrote, and no small part of his efforts is directed towards creating kindly feelings between white and colored citizens. The Bamberg Herald reported that letters flooded the mayor's office in Macon, Georgia, protesting the utterances of Turner. They wrote that the most spiritual disapproval came in a letter from Minneapolis that read, if there are any white men in Macon, they ought to thrash that dirty black brute within an inch of his life. Another letter read, we think he deserves the full extent of Macon's wrath and the prosecution of the government. Really, such a mild punishment is far too dignified a method in which to handle a fiend. Whew. 9 days after the speech, though, Turner responded in an editorial published in the Atlanta Constitution. In a letter titled, Turner Denies He Cursed the Flag, Turner started by denying that he ever called the flag of the nation a dirty and contemptible rag. However, he did admit that in his 45-minute speech, he said some things to counter the record. Turner wrote that he did say that there was not a star on the flag that the Negro could claim or that recognized his civil liberty and unconditional manhood more than if it was a dirty rag. Turner wrote that he did say that African Americans were not citizens of the United States since the delivery of the monstrous decision by the United States Supreme Court on October 15, 1883 and May 18, 1896. Further, Turner wrote that he did say that there was more color babble in the United States than in hell itself, that color was unknown there, that men went there on the account of their crimes and vicious lives. But the United States, everybody's value or non-value depended upon color. Moving away from what he said in the speech, Turner then reassured his readers that while African Americans were calling more state conventions than ever, white people need not to worry about their effectiveness. Quote, nothing more than petitions through communications and delegations would be the end result, Turner wrote. The government would be asked for better conditions to help us help ourselves. But after reminding his readers that he had been before the people of Georgia for 48 years and had not hurt anybody yet, and is too old to hurt anything, Turner did promise to do all that he could not to pull down the white man, but to lift up the black man. Now, if Turner hoped his letter would have calmed his critics, he would be sadly mistaken. Instead of focusing on his response, many newspapers still focus on his speech and his denunciation of the flag. The St. Paul Appeal wrote that while Turner was a well-meaning and imprudent man, they wrote that the speech only excited the prejudice against the people with whom he is identified. They argued that racial prejudice was already strong enough without any increase, and that for the sake of his people, Bishop Turner should talk more wisely or just hold his peace, because he was making the white folk upset, I guess. The black-owned newspaper, the Atlanta Independent, criticized Turner as well. They wrote, quote, nobody takes Turner seriously. They called Turner a freak and wrote that his words were incendiary, treasonable, and sacrilegious. They suggested that Turner utterances no more represent the conservatism and representative character of the race in the state than did the convention. While they did admit that the flag has different meanings for both whites and blacks, they argued that blacks do not have anything to gain and could not hope for any additional protection from its significance by denouncing it and its sentiment. They closed with a stinging rebuke of Turner and his speech. Quote, if the good bishop believes what he said, they wrote, he is a fraud and ought to have the moral courage to stand up in open meeting and tell his people that this Christian religion is a humbug. The bishop's sacrilege against the flag of his country cannot help but to prove hurtful to the race and people he was seeking to help. His language was not only unfortunate and hurtful to the Negro masses, but it also argues our innate inferiority, unquote. When white business owners complained that African Americans, after Turner comments, were leaving the state, and as a result, there was no one to work the farms, Turner responded that the reason was not that blacks were lazy and did not want to work. They left because they were looking for better and more favorable conditions. It did not help that the Democratic gubernatorial primary had been unmercifully anti-black. The fact is, declared Turner, that 100,000 have left the state in pursuit of better conditions to get rid of the eternal Negro howl that is heard from year to year. He is a burden of every speech and almost every newspaper article. He wrote that he believed that at least 15,000 stump and platform speeches have been delivered since the present gubernatorial campaign has been going on, and not one of those speeches have been void of the Negro. Turner's argument about the rhetoric of the gubernatorial campaign was not hyperbole. Smith campaigned on the outright disenfranchisement of black voters. Despite the veneer of Atlanta being the beacon of interracial progress, the racist Democratic campaign for governor exposed what was brewing underneath the surface. In September of 1906, when Hoke Smith defeated Clark Howell for the nomination, a few days later, behind the rhetoric of the campaign and the consistent theme of anti-blackness in the media and popular press, white people in Atlanta exploded into a bloody rampage against black folk. Aptly misnamed the Atlanta Race Riot, it should be named the Atlanta Massacre. At the end of a 3-day orgy of violence, dozens of black people were dead, property and business in the community was destroyed, and if it hadn't been for black people finally taking up arms in self-defense, many historians argued that it could have been worse. After the massacre, city officials seemed to be more concerned about the city's image than anything else. Both black and white ministers in the city began to campaign and refocus their efforts on establishing, quote, law and order. Interracial dialogue started that led to the creation of the Atlantic Civic League and the Color Cooperative Civic League. While white ministers united in their belief in white superiority and the need for racial segregation, black ministers joined efforts to close many of the, quote, dives where working class patrons were described as vicious rounders, loafers, and grossly ignorant criminals, and whose passions were stirred by mean liquor. In providing leadership to their respective communities, both black and white ministers took public roles in closing down the bars in the black community. Many African American ministers felt that if they took a strong position against perceived idleness and shiftless attitudes of working class and lower class blacks, they would find a measure of favor from white people. Now, for Turner, the actions of white people massacring black people was not a surprise. He had been warning African Americans about this for years. Moreover, he argued that the ministers were focusing on the wrong issues in addressing the massacre. In a speech on November 7, 1906, in Bainbridge, Georgia, Turner told his audience that the Atlanta episode a few weeks ago was the greatest misfortune that has ever happened to the two races in this section. It was all the worse, Turner continued, for the reasons that the better classes in both races look to Atlanta for intelligence, forbearance, Christianity, and race respect for one for the other. In Turner's estimation, the massacre caused more suffering, wounded feelings, and families wrecked for all time. He reminded his audience of his continued calls to immigrate to Africa and said that the Atlanta trouble is the greatest proof of the wisdom and judgment of my project than anything. He closed by asking, quote, in the name of all that is good and righteous, what do you see in this country for the black man but constant trouble? The following year, in April of 1907, at a meeting held at the People's Tabernacle in Atlanta for the purpose of, quote, bringing better understanding between the races and toning down some of the more incendiary rhetoric between the races, Turner delivered a speech that again shifted the focus from blaming African Americans for the massacre to getting his audience to see the much bigger picture. Turner declared that, quote, enough innocent blood had been shed to drown the Congress, the Supreme Court, and President Roosevelt. He argued that the courts were keeping African Americans in subjugation, that all the laws favored white people, and bitterly assailed Georgia Senator Benjamin Tillman for his anti-black rhetoric. Turner also challenged Tillman to pick any jury of his own picking as to the relative refinement and education of both men, and openly declared that if he failed to win, he was willing to be hanged. Most of the newspaper reporting on the meeting called Turner's speech a surprise, and that he made a bitter attack at a meeting that organizers had hoped to be uncontroversial. However, despite criticisms leveled at the country and at Senator Tillman, African Americans in the audience widely cheered Turner's speech. Later, Turner revisited an issue that got him into trouble the previous year: the flag. If the thought of being brought up with treason charges and having both blacks and whites upset with him entered his mind, it was not enough to stop Turner's prophetic denunciations about how black people were treated in America. In a speech delivered at the AME conference in New York at Bridge Street Brooklyn Church, Turner said, "I used to love the American flag once myself, but I now despise it because America is the most horrible, color-prejudiced nation on earth. Here, Negroes can be lynched, burned alive, and skinned, and nothing is done about it." Turner told the crowd that his loyalty to the country was like the loyalty of Jefferson Davis. Quote, "I know I have been criticized and called a fool because I believe in Negro nationality, but I don't care any more for my critics than I do for the bark of a dog." He argued that whites proscribe African Americans because of their whimsical prejudices and misanthropes, and African Americans were just sitting there and whining. Unlike the last time, however, his flag comments did not dust up too much of a stir on the national scene. However, there was one notable exception. A writer named Anna Mixon wrote a letter to the editor of the New York Age responding to Turner's speech. She started by writing, if the daily papers correctly reported the utterances of Bishop H.M. Turner, the race should hang its head in humiliation for the hopeless, perverted state of a very narrow mind. Mixon argued that stirring up feelings of hatred, pandering to the taste of a hot-headed and ignorant person is not going to better matters. In fact, it really hurts the cause. She suggested that hurling insults at the flag would not add to his list of friends, and that every colored man and woman should rise up and condemn him. For some, however, Turner's rhetoric, although fiery and bombastic, hit all the right notes. You see, back home in Georgia on November the 14th, 1907, Turner spoke to an audience of about 400 ministers of the Southwest Georgia Conference and delivered a remarkable and stirring address that was, quote, enthusiastically received. In addressing plans from the state legislature to follow on its plans to disenfranchise African Americans, Turner lamented that there was, quote, no concern about our rights and the rights of our children and our children's children. He suggested that anyone who sits quietly was tying their children's children to the wheels of degradation for 100 years to come. He said, quote, "We are passing through a fearful exercise now. It is apparent that the hand and circle of dominant power is against us." He argued that the effort to disenfranchise and rule us out of the pale of humanity is an effort to disgrace us, a scheme to put into operation malicious and misanthropic men to tie us to the wheel of degradation. And as I read Bishop Turner's words tonight, I must admit that they speak volumes today. We are passing through a fearful exercise now, as elected leaders continue to nullify our history, prevent others from learning about it. We're passing through a fearful exercise now, As ICE agents can racially profile and snatch up people at will, they can even kill people on camera and get away with it. We are passing through a fearful exercise now. With many in this country still promoting racist ideas and policy, we're passing through a fearful exercise now, where Project 2025 is now the guiding principle that is being played right out in front of our very eyes. As Turner said, it is apparent that the hand and circle of dominant power are against us. But just as Turner did, we must not give up. Even though I called him a pessimistic prophet, Turner did not quit. He did not become nihilistic, did not give up. He got up every morning and did what he was meant to do. His prophetic pessimism was an unflinching demand that people see the world exactly as it was so they might survive it. Therefore, in the spirit of Turner, let us not give up. Even when the mess become messier and the crazy become crazier, let us not give up. Even when people we thought were on our side betray us for the proverbial 30 pieces of silver, let us not give up. Even when the going gets rough and the going gets tough, let us not give up. Even when companies and schools discontinue their DEI initiatives when they do not even have to, let us not give up. And although we are facing a fearful time now, we won't be bound here forever, and truth will prevail if we do not give up. So let us continue to bear witness in the Black prophetic tradition, which recognizes who we are and also who and whose we are. Thank you. And with that, I will open up for some Q&A. So glad to have a bunch of folk checking in. One of my former students, Dr. Natanya, checking in. Thank you for checking in. Deacon Kim checking in. Sister Trella, I see you checking in. Another one of my students, the Reverend Dr. Daryl Harrington, is checking in as well too. Dr. Damon, I see you, man, a historian in his own right who's doing great work, I believe, in the South Carolina area. So if you have any questions or comments, I am here to answer those. And we just wanted to be able to share on Bishop's birthday and on this first day of Black History Month. His 1906 and 1907 dealings with the American flag. Whole lot of that left out for this talk, but I hope you got the gist of it, that if you believe that standing up to the powers that be is something that won't cost you anything, you are sadly mistaken. And even if you are famous like Bishop Turner was, and at that time he was a senior bishop of the AME Church, he still had to respond to his critics. And did he ever respond? All right, Kimberly Travers, I appreciate this Black History Month lecture. Your insights open up so many. I'm curious, do you anticipate writing additional books? Oh, and future scholarship on Turner. Thank you, Deacon Kim. I do think I do at least have one more book in me about Bishop Turner. I really want to write a overall understanding about Bishop Turner as it relates to his work, of course, in the church, but it's also his political work, his work in the military, then his work against the military and against armies and stuff. So I'm thinking about a one of those full-length rhetorical biographies, but I don't know. I'm doing so much right now. I may not be able to get to it, but I do think there's another book, and I do encourage people to look up Turner, and a lot of stuff have already Previous to my research on Turner, there was limited information out, especially about his writings and his speeches and stuff. So a lot of people now are discovering Turner for the first time. So I want you to be able to use that material and come up with your own papers, your own essays, your own presentations, and your own books as well. All right. Oh, thank you, Reverend Brown. Thank you. Oh, thank you, Dr. Natanya. She asked, what was the AME Church's responses to Bishop Turner's speeches? Well, good, bad, and indifferent. I mean, later on, um, they really, you know, what's the nice way to put it? They had disagreements, and and many in the church wanted to just set Turner aside, and eventually they did in 1908. They made him the historiographer and took him took a his bishop duties away, and they set him on the sidelines for maybe a year and a half until they needed him back because one of the bishops had passed away, and they needed some experienced leadership in the area, and they called Bishop Turner back. And Turner, of course, as he always had done, served admirably in that position until he died in 1915. But yeah, Bishop always had big debates with the other bishops, and some of those debates are in print. and and maybe that should be a book, just the Turner debates. Maybe we can just go back and forth, and maybe we need to have. Wow, I just thought about this. Maybe we should just have a book that just highlights Turner's debates, the back and forth with Benjamin Tanner, with Daniel Payne, with other bishops and other ministers of the denomination as well too. A lot of rank and file ministers went after Turner in the press, and Turner responded in kind. Talking about playing the dozens, Turner was pretty good. He held his own. He held his own. Uh, oh wow! Thank you, Dr. Harrington. Dr. Dale is asking about prophetic pessimism. That's actually going to be a talk, not next week, but probably the week after. I'm going to do a full talk. A lot of people have been asking me to expound a little bit more about prophetic pessimism. I only touched on it in this talk to just kind of highlight what I want to talk about in a couple of weeks. But the power, I think, of prophetic pessimism, first of all, it is not nihilism. It is not giving up. It is not quitting. It is recognizing where you are so you can govern yourself accordingly. If you believe, like a lot of people, that, hey, things might just happen and turn around tomorrow or whatever. No, you are going to be sorely disappointed and dismayed. And a lot of people have left movements because they think that, hey, I have the right attitude and I'm doing it the right way. I'm not. Notice how people are talking about these protests. They're peaceful and they're doing it the right way. They're not doing, and they're still getting pulled over. They're still getting harassed. They're still getting pushed and they're still getting wrapped up. And some of them are still dying. If you have that attitude about your movement and your place in it because you and you alone have the right words, or you and your group have the right words, then yes, you are going to be sorely disappointed. And then that's when nihilism kicks in. Turner was trying to get people to understand where they were. These folk do not like you. They are passing laws to disenfranchise you, to nullify the gains of Reconstruction. I was there, Turner will say. I saw it firsthand when we got the 13th, the 14th, and 15th Amendment, and I'm watching it being stripped away now, just like today. And if you don't know where you are, you don't know what strategies to use. And that's what prophetic, in a nutshell, prophetic pessimism is all about. It is speaking truth to power. It is naming the demon that is alive and well. And then saying, okay, there might be something we can do about it right now, or it may not be anything we can do, but just to hold out and to hold on. Because that's another misconception, that there's always something that we can do. Sometimes it's nothing that we can do. And I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, because that goes against the norm. That goes against the American progression, American transformation and progression story. Sometimes all we can do is sit here with sackcloth and ashes and lament about what's going on. And the lament is helpful sometimes to me and for me, because I realize that A, I'm not by myself, and two, that other people are feeling the same pain that I'm feeling. But like I said, in a couple of weeks, I'm going to do a whole talk on prophetic pessimism, maybe that third Sunday of the month. We're not going to do anything next week because that's Super Bowl, and I know y'all ain't going to be on no you're not going to be watching me on no Facebook or YouTube Live talking about prophetic pessimism when the football game is on. So, but hallelujah. Yeah, Sister Donna, wait and see. I love it. Yeah, wait and see. Sometimes. Are there any more questions about Turner? Anything that anybody wants to ask? Let me see if I got anything. Is the power of writing still value as an example? Yeah, okay. So we're talking about somebody actually text me and asked about the value of writing. Yes, because that's exactly what Bishop Turner did. Bishop Turner would be known as a public intellectual today. He wrote for the public. He did his theology in the public. He was a public theologian. When he declared and decried that God is a Negro, he was doing public theology, rhetorical theology, even, because he was trying to get black folk to understand, listen, at its foundational level, if you do not believe that the God who created you could even look like you, there's no hope in the world for you. That's what he said. There's no hope. Because if the God of all creation is against you, and if you believe that with every fiber of your being, how are you going to make it? So yes, writing, putting stuff out there. That's why I got back to doing my own little small blog post writing, making my little comments in social media and in spaces, because what is needed now, in when you have just a cacophony of lies and misdirection and innuendo and disinformation and misinformation, the only thing that can buffer against that is consistent and constant truth. Yes, it can get lost in the sauce a lot of time, and a lot of times it does, but it must be consistent. One must bear witness. What happens when persuasion is not on the table any longer? You must bear witness with a body, with a voice, with a sign. You must go out and you must bear witness. That's the way that you talk. That's the way that you communicate. And you use any and all levels of power that you have. And maybe we need to have a talk on power, because a lot of folk are afraid of power. I can tell you a group of people who are not afraid of power, who are using power, and we can agree to disagree on how they're using it, but they're using every levels of their power, and you need to use every levels of your levers, rather, of your power. You need to do that. Come on, Dr. Gould. Dr. Gould has been out there witnessing, have been showing us on video after video about people who are doing that work out there. And now we need to discern where we are in all of this. That's what Bishop Turner's message was. Bishop Turner's message is this is not the glorious United States of America where everybody gets rights. You need to understand that because you go out there thinking that how many people have you talked to? I'm going to prove this to you right now, and you can make a comment in the comment section. I'm going to prove it to you right now. How many people have you talked to who you've been trying to tell about what's going on, and they talk about, girl, or man, I ain't worried about that because I know that my rights, they ain't talking about me. They talking about them other folks, and I know I was born here, and I got all this going, and nobody's going to stop me. How many people have you heard said that same stuff? I'll wait. Come on, bring it. Because I know you have. And that's what I'm talking about. People not understanding the dire situation. People who are just waking up saying, ooh, I didn't know it was this bad. Come on, man. We were telling you that a year ago, 2 years ago. Come on, Sister Donna. 2 minute account. Right. That's what I'm saying. And so, Bishop Turner, a lot of people ask me, what would Bishop Turner say in today's language? Bishop Turner would say, you're in a messed up condition. He probably would not talk about immigration because it's all over the world now. So he will recognize that. But he will still say that you must stand and fight with what you have. You can't go out there and physically fight because you'll get slaughtered. That was his language. You'll get slaughtered. But you just can't sit back and be a doormat either, because you'll pass that on to your children and children's children ad nauseum. He was really strong on that. Because he was always thinking about the future. How would black folk act if they have been under the thumb of oppression year after year after year after year? How would they respond? And maybe he was drawing a little bit off of the biblical story about these stones. You know, remember where you come from. What a great message on the first day of Black History Month. Because some of us have forgotten the journey. Some of us got the illusion of inclusion, thinking that we have arrived. We got black preachers preaching a gospel I know not of, forgetting the fact that for them to even have the platform that they preach that Babish, toxic gospel, that somebody had to go out and bear witness to the fact that black folk were indeed human and that black folk had rights and would not stand against and would not stand for you to take away those rights. Somebody asked me, talk about a little bit about hell is an improvement as far as the nigga. That was Turner's saying. He said it was so bad in America that hell was an improvement for Negroes. Can you imagine that? Imagine what that must look like if hell is an improvement. So, by use of metaphor, by use of acerbic language, by use of bombastic language, by use of prophetic utterances, which is all part of the pessimistic prophetic tradition, the use of laments. Oh Lord, where are you in all of this? Turner was trying to get a message across. A message that we need to be trying to get out today. I'm so glad that folk are now waking up. Welcome. Everybody comes to the movement, or everybody comes to your enlightenment or your wokeness all at different times. But you need to remember something. You need to remember you don't have all the answers. You need to remember that other people were here doing this work, laying the foundation, and you need to build upon that. That's what Turner is trying to get us to understand. A lot of people in Turner's day wanted to forget about slavery. Slavery was an embarrassment for some black folk. Slavery was like, it set us back so much that let's forget about that and let's just move forward because we are now citizens. And Turner was like, no, you're not. Because the Supreme Court is ruling against you. The local and state courts are ruling against you. You got people in state houses that used to be a part of the Confederacy. Hear me today. People that used to be part of the Confederacy, a government that was established to fight against and to take over the United States of America. They now were in power. And they passed laws using their power the way that they saw fit. Oh, can't stop you from voting because you're black? No problem. Here's a little poll tax. You got the poll tax? No problem. Here's a little literacy text. Can you read this? No problem. Can you read the Constitution? Can you tell me what Article 2, Section 1 says of the Constitution? Oh, you can't? Can't vote then. Sorry. And the Supreme Court said, that's good. Any of this sounding familiar? Any of this sounding familiar? Oh, the 14th Amendment was supposed to be, to guarantee rights for formerly enslaved folk and make, rights and privileges. And well, come on, corporations, you're people now too. This is where we are. It's where we are. Check out your state legislature, all of us who live in red states, quote, red states. Check out what those new legislations and laws and proposed laws and bills are going to be when the session starts back up in a couple of weeks. Just check it out. Because they have the power. And they're going to use the power. Because they know that they can be backed up. Ultimately, if need be, Supreme Court. Turner is trying to get us, I think, on the first day, on his birthday. Happy birthday, Bishop. On his birthday, first day of Black History Month in 2026, to realize and recognize where we are. Thank you, Sarah, Angela Webster. He's trying to get us to remember where we are and know where we are. Understand, discern the sign of the times. How about that one? Know that nobody is coming to help us other than us. If we can understand that, then we can begin to start talking about a plan of action. We can start talking about our care networks, mutual aid societies. We can start doing those things. But as long as we think that all we have to do is just do one thing or this other thing, all they have to do is to get up there and speak this eloquent speech and people would change their mind. All they have to do is that If I go and talk to the people, when you understand that the stronghold is the stronghold, and the stronghold fights against anybody that speaks out against the stronghold. Come through, white people. Even white people are not safe against the stronghold. And it is a shock to the system. But as I mentioned earlier in the sermon that I preached earlier today, if Black truth that Turner and Ida B. Wells and Francis Allen Watkins Hopper and Benjamin Tanner and Henry Highland Garnett and Frederick Douglass and a whole host of others, if that Black truth would have been believed back then, if the Black truth would have been believed in the 20th century, in the Civil Rights Movement, maybe we could have been further along. This is where we are. This is what Turner is trying to get at for us today, to recognize and realize that it may not change overnight. Matter of fact, maybe a while before anything changes. The question is, what are we doing about it? And what are we going to do about it? And if there is nothing we can do about it in the short term, we then sit, lament, and still bear witness to the atrocities. Because you know what's going to happen. And you're going to say, Doc, how you know that? You're not a fortune teller. You're right, I'm not that type of preacher. But I am a student of history. And I do know 40 or 50 years from now, the people who were out there in Minneapolis and the people who were bearing witness against the atrocities that were going on in their day and time are going to be the ones that celebrated. And the ones that were on the wrong side of history are going to go scrambling, trying to hide. I always wonder how their children and grandchildren will feel. And it's going to be really easy to spot them and find them because of social media. Come on in this house. Thank you, Dr. Gould and Sister Trina. Thank you. Brother Gross, thank you. Brother Razel, I see you. Thank you for checking in. Sarah Sonia, checking in. Thank you, and thank you. We got time for maybe one more question or comment. I apologize for going on and on, but I felt the spirit of Turner upon me. Truth tellers who face pushback. What should we do when it becomes overwhelming? That is a great question. I can only share with you what I try to do. I try to stay in community. I try to be around people who love me, who appreciate me, who pray for me, who walk with me, talk with me, who sometimes admonishes me, who reminds me of who and whose I am, who would give me a little break, a little respite, will allow me to take a break, who will push me sometimes to take a break. We cannot do this work without community. It may be one, it may be two, it may be three or four, but people who you know that you can cry out to, lament to, yell at, just get stuff off your chest. It has helped me so much in the work that I do to know that I can kick back and relax and be myself around people who just appreciate me being me. I honor that. I don't take that for granted. It is an honor to be in their presence. It is an honor that they allow me to share space with them. And that helps me get through the tough times. And then a good night's sleep, maybe a little bit of rest, maybe some prayer, some meditation, and then discerning what I need to do next. That's how I make it. I believe that's how Turner made it. I believe that's how Turner made it. He had some friends. And a lot of his personal friends, like Ida B. Wells and others, were women who he had helped along the way, who he wrote about publicly. And in the 19th century, for a black minister to write publicly affirming a black woman, it's a big thing. Recognizing and realizing that there were people who appreciated him. And sometimes you got to focus on the people that do love you, that do care about you, instead of the ones who are always criticizing you. Brother Ray, you want to know what you can help to do? How can you help our ministry? That's a great question. Right after we wrap up, you're going to see a video that will explain how you can do just that. Thank you for that question. Because this is part of our ministry, Gifts of Life Ministries, G-Life, the Urban Oasis. This is something that we want to do. This is our contribution. There go the QR code there up on the left. This is our contribution to all of this. We're going to bring in more people. We're going to have more opportunities to share, bringing you information and hopefully words of encouragement. Hopefully we can be part of that family and that community that you can trust, that you can be part of. Thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for being a part of this Power to the People series. Thank you for being a part of our ministry tonight. And thank you for being the person that you are. I pray that you discern what it is that you need to do in this season. And I pray that God will give you the clarity and the vision to do it. Now to the God who is able to keep us from falling, who can present us faultless before the throne of grace and mercy, to the wise knowing God of all creation. In the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, in the name of the Creator, Sustainer, and Life Giver, we say together, amen. Thank God. Hallelujah. Glory to God's name. And Ashe. Now, how can you help? Watch this.
At the heart of Gifts of Life Ministries is a simple but profound belief that everyone deserves the chance to live with dignity, hope, and faith. Guided by the pastoral leadership of Reverend Dr. Andre E. Johnson, our ministry has been a source of healing, empowerment, and transformation for individuals and communities too often overlooked and left behind. Through preaching, teaching, outreach, and advocacy, Reverend Johnson and this ministry work tirelessly to create what they call an urban oasis. Whether it is providing spiritual care, feeding the hungry, mentoring the next generation, or standing for justice, every effort is rooted in the gospel call to love God and love our neighbors as ourselves. But we cannot do this work alone. The truth is, our vision outpaces our resources. Ministries that change lives require faithful partners like you who believe in this mission and are willing to sow into it. This is where you come in. Your financial support will allow Gifts of Life Ministries to expand community outreach to families in need, support transformative preaching, teaching, and scholarship from Pastor Johnson, provide resources that nurture faith, education, and empowerment sustain the daily operations that make ongoing ministry possible. Every gift, large or small, is a seed of hope. When you give, you are not only supporting a ministry, you are investing in changed lives, renewed communities, and a future filled with possibility. We invite you prayerfully to consider contributing today. Together, we can continue the vital work of proclaiming life, love, and liberation in places where it's needed most. Thank you for your generosity, your prayers, and your belief in this sacred calling.